fancy intro music. Yeah! Woohoo!
It's the USS Thunderchild, and yes, that is the Thunderchild that you would have seen from Star Trek First Contact and other Star Trek series. But should you pick up the Akira class here in Star Trek Fleet Command, would it be of any value to you? And I think this actually broaches on a wider conversation that needs to be had as G6 has aged 2 years now and how accessible it has become, but does that make it worth going after? Well, in this video, I'm gonna talk about what you're gonna get if you pick one up, how well it can perform, what the cost could be, and whether or not you should do it based on your playstyle. Which really is the answer. Spoiler alert, it's based on your playstyle. Well, let's talk about it. So what are you getting with the Akira if you pick it up? Well, you're getting something that will handle all your G6 and foreseeable future PvE content that exists. One of the biggest complaints that comes up with this ship actually has nothing to do with its ability to, say, take on the G6 Solar Armadas or the hostiles that exist. Biggest issue is the firing pattern, which is more of a PvP thing. Now, to be very clear, I'm not diminishing that as an issue. It is undeniable that the G5 epics are significantly superior in PvP. And when I mean the G5 epics, I mean all of them. It doesn't matter if it's the Enterprise, the Rotaran, or the D'Deridex. All of them should drastically outperform the Akira for quite some time because of firing pattern differences. And again, I can put both of them on the screen as a comparison. You can see on the left side, we got the firing pattern of the Enterprise D, and on the right side, the firing pattern of the Akira here, which is the USS Thunderchild. Now, this doesn't mean that you can't have success with the Akira, but it is something to take note of. The short answer, are there better ships to use in G6 than a G6 Uncommon? Yeah, the answer is definitely yes. In fact, I've talked about the importance of having one of these, especially getting it at least tier 8, preferably maxed at level 60, makes it very easy to move through the space of G6. Now, the counter argument to that is 2 years of the economy with a lot of things being added to the game, it's pretty easy to afford a 63 uncommon, and there are certain advantages to doing that. So for example, let me call these out real quick. We talk about the mastery artifacts. Well, these didn't exist 2 years ago. These alone drastically are improving the amount that you get in terms of speed ups for Sigma, materials, resources, etc. that again was not available when these ships originally came out, because one of the biggest griping points beyond the firing pattern is the upgrade cost, how much it takes to invest in them. Don't forget that this requires a tier 9 ship to be able to upgrade your Borg cube in terms of those parts coinciding together. And I'm not necessarily advocating for a tier 9 uncommon. I'm simply saying that it's become easier and easier to do. You'll need to make that decision for yourself. But with this being a 15 tier ship, tier 9 still leaves a lot of the epic and rare out of the way in terms of cost, and you can use that in your future ships, like maybe a Koskari at level 66 or a Velox or whatever it is that you personally prefer. We'll add this though. When it comes down to overall cost and usability, there are a few advantages. Let me talk about what those advantages are. Obviously, you're going to get a better warp range situation than with a G5 Uncommon, which can be nice for things like running the Armadas. Again, when you have more tools become available to you, you want to be able to take advantage of those, and G6 Solar Armadas are a pretty decent tool when it comes to payouts. But to access those, you need certain warp ranges. For example, the Epics starting over here in Holst, well, that requires a warp range just a little bit outside of what you probably have with your Enterprise, unless you've completed everything possible in terms of warp range research. And I, in this particular instance, am just a smidge short when it comes to the old Admiral Kirk, because I don't yet have Command Center 60. That might be something the average player also has a limitation on. Again, this isn't to say that you can't overcome certain limitations. It's more of, I think it's important to show what can be useful for something than to just dump on it and say, oh, it's trash. Another thing to consider is research. Now, each one of the uncommons will give you access to research that you will not have access to if you skip them. Is that research relevant in today's game? I think the answer is both yes and no. And I think that you can have success without this. Now, what I'm talking about are these right here. Federation Ion Storm protection, then you've got the Romulan radiation protection, and then last but not least, the Klingon asteroid protection. Now, there are other researchers that will improve your protection against these items, but as you can see, they have a prerequisite of having the uncommons. So if nothing else, down the road, you're going to want to pick the ships up just so you can get that OCD completion of, finishing all of the research. But as you come down further in the tree, once you enter G6, you will find more hazard resistances. So don't feel like that's the only option, but it is a limitation locked behind owning the ship. And this ship is something that will grow into be something quite strong. Here on the screen, I'll put some examples of a higher tier version of an uncommon. With a Minerva and an Akira, you can see that in terms of overall power, DPR, and warp range, they do get superior to your G5s, but doesn't mean that they're necessarily the best option. Again, I want to have a full-fledged option for you, which means that if you really want to talk about what's strongest for a low-level G6 player that isn't the G5 epics, it's probably gonna be the GS31 and the Relativity as of this moment. Those two special ships both getting not only very strong, but very valuable in terms of DPR and overall effect. And we've talked about this being one of the best PvP boats in the game in early and mid G6, and even to a degree, late G6. So when it comes to the Akira, what are we getting? You're getting a solid ship that has some limitations. It is becoming easier and easier and more justifiable to invest in one simply because of price reductions. And by price reductions, I mean efficiencies. You get a lot more Sigma now than you did before. Can you believe there was a day that players actually mined Sigma? That's how hard it was to get it. And that isn't, again, to say that it's cheap either. That really comes down to what I mentioned earlier, play style. If you're a player who wants to play a little bit slower, I would suggest picking up a 63 uncommon like this Akira here. Why would I do that? Well, simply put, if you avoid Scopely pitfalls, you don't have to worry about, well, do I have to spend $100? And picking up at least one of every faction ship does naturally make you play a little bit slower. There's also the enjoyment of a new ship, which allows new things. You want to talk about this ship, how it performs? Well, even at tier 3, it's going to perform quite well in solo waves, any PvE content. The only drawback is below deck spots. Again, if you've maxed out that G5 Epic, you've got a slew of below deck spots that, as you can see here, a tier 3 Akira doesn't have. You need to at least get to tier 6, tier 7, etc. before you start getting to the point where the Akira is catching up with below deck spots to make it more valuable compared to an Epic. And that's where you have to decide, is it worth the investment? Not to mention the tier 9 requirement that your board cube demands if you want to take the cube up, which we know that at max tier 18, the Borg Cube is the strongest ship in G6. Technically, I'm putting the Vengeance in G7, but it's the strongest in G6. But it requires tier 9 if you want to continue to upgrade that or just wait to the 66. There's no wrong answer here. It really comes down to individual playstyle and what works for you. The Akira can do everything. This standard Armada crew will perform very well against your Armadas. It'll take down entities. It has good warp range compared to the G5 Epics, allowing you to reach a few more things that maybe just quicken your pace of your progression. At the same time, be wary of investing too deeply into them, because while you can find value, and you certainly have gotten a lot better ways to get things like Sigma and speed ups today, that doesn't mean you have an unlimited amount. Keep in mind that the 66s will drastically outperform the 63s, similar to how you have a 46, shout out to the Pylum, drastically outperforming a Katinga at level 42. Same argument persists here, simply comes back to how reasonable is it to progress these, and 2 years into G6, USS Thunderchild is reasonable to be progressed with. So there's the thoughts, there's the analysis, and there are the numbers. Let me know what you think down in the comment section down below. Do you plan on getting one? If you got one, do you like it? If you got one, do you regret it? You find both of those answers, so there's not a wrong one. So let me know what you think. As always, live long and plunder. Stay safe with our Space Cowboys. Deuces, that's me. Catch you on the next Star Trek Fleeking Man video. I'm enjoying mine. Let me know if you're enjoying yours.
An even better outro than the intro. For the Empire and glory to your house.